Today I'm going to be tying up a recent variant of the McCormick's shrimp that has been working very well on the northwest of Ireland over the last few weeks. Okay, so I've added on my thread, and for the tag and the rib I'm going to be using gold. So I'm going to use gold wire. I always prefer wire over tinsel if I can get away with it. Okay, I'm just going to run that thread right down to just above the hook points. Okay, and then I'm going to get the wire. I'm going to do a few turns towards the rear of the hook, usually about 4 or 5 turns, and then the last turn I'm going to tuck it in underneath and bring it forward. Okay, I'm going to bring the thread the whole way down just to try and keep the level of body, and then I'm going to twist that wire off. I'll put that on later on again. Okay. Now, the tail of the fly is in 2 parts, which is quite unique, or it was quite unique anyway at the time, for the McCormick's shrimp. So, it's going to be bucktail with a bit of flesh and then a hackle over it. So, I've just got some pre-prepared, pre-mixed and stacked, or pre-stacked clarity, ruby claret kind of bucktail. It's the perfect colour for this fly. Okay, I probably have a wee bit much there, so I'm going to thin it out a bit. Okay, and then I'm going to be tying this. I'll tie this probably a little bit down the body here first. And I'll have a look to see. Length is probably about 2 or 3 times the shank. Okay. Then I'm just going to tie that on. And before I actually get right up to the tag, I'm going to add on a little bit of flesh as well. So the flesh for this fly would be gold crystal flesh. Okay, you could use copper, you could use pearls, entirely up to yourself. But gold's worked well for me. So just going to continue to bring that up, and then as I get closer to the end, I'm going to put on a little bit of super glue on the thread. And this means I don't need to compress the bucktail. The super glue will hold it so it doesn't splay too much. Okay, then I can bring the thread back up the body and apply as much pressure as I want. Okay, then just trim off your excess as you go along. Try and taper the body if you can. Not essential, but it'll just make it a nicer looking fly. Okay, that's the first part of the tail. Then the second part of the tail is it's going to be, you can use claret, a large claret cockhackle, or you could use claret dyed golden pheasant. It's up to yourself, but this works well for me, so I'm going to keep at it. And this is a hackle or a cape that I've used for a while. It's like a nice ruby claret, but also it's a slightly barred as well, like a badger hackle. So yeah, I like it, so I'm going to keep with it. Okay, so I just broke off the tip and bring it down. I don't need to double it back or anything the way I normally do, because I know there's tacky super glue there. Okay, so I'm just going to run the back of my scissors along that shank or that stalk to try and double the fibres. Okay, and then I'm going to sweep them round and touch and turns bring that stalk up the body. Okay, so we've done maybe 4 turns would do me for this size of fly, or a little bit of fibres to make an easier cut. Okay, and the reason I've done that is actually the face went flying there in the last attempt, so I'd already stripped those off and had to restart again. With the magic of movies, you won't see that. Okay, so have a wee look at the tail. Make sure that those fibres are evenly spread out. Okay, and then what I like to do with my shrimp flies or my Irish shrimp flies is just go over a little bit of that hackle, and that way it's not the stalk being held, but it's actually the fibres or the thread is holding the fibres. It'll also help it pulse as well, and you can see the lovely shape there that it gives. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is add on parts of our body. So underneath, in fact above, I'm going to use Claret, and this is like a wine coloured floss. And then I'm going to use some gold wire, and I'm going to put that in underneath. Okay, going to neaten up as I go along here just to try and cleanse nice and clean. A bit of wax for the floss to adhere to. Okay, and then just bring that thread up about 2/3 of the body, or maybe just less than half of the body. Okay, sorry, just more than half the body. Okay, then we'll just get our floss, and touch and turns, just bring that up. Normally I would use white under floss, but because this is, it's like a dark claret kind of fly anyway, I'm happy enough putting this on top of the red floss. I'm going to give the fly a red head. It would usually have a black head, but I think the red head will work a lot nicer for this time of year. As we come to the end of the season, or it is the end of the season in many places. Okay, and then we'll just bring our rib up, and we'll just use 3 or 4 turns up the body. Okay, and then screw that in underneath. Okay, then I'm going to get the wire, and I'm going to twist it again. And again, this is to save me on the scissors. Okay, now we'll go up. We'll start with our mid-hackle. Okay, so our mid-hackle for the fly is going to be Claret again. Okay, but obviously smaller Claret. So I'm going to break off the tip and expose a few fibres. Okay, and then wax the thread. Tie in at that break, and then sweep it back and tie again. Okay, that'll give me a very secure hold, and then just start to chain those fibres back. Okay, and the plan is for these fibres to be touching and going into the tail fibres. So you have a large hackle, a medium hackle, and a small hackle. It's not the traditional way, but it's probably the modern way that seems to be getting more popular. Okay, 1, 2. Okay, just over 3 turns there. Okay, don't worry about any fibres going forward, we'll get those on the way back down again. Okay, next I'm going to add on my front body. So again, it's Claret, no surprise. So I'm going to put that onto the top again as before. And then I'm going to use a gold wire underneath. You can see some of those fibres still going forward, don't worry about those, because they're going to get swept back here and a wee mat. I've cut off my floss, I'll do that again. Just have one of those days where it's not all going to plan, but we'll get there. Okay, so I've just started to bring my thread back up to that mid hackle. Anything loose, just neaten up and bring it back down the body. Okay, so this is a slightly shorter part of the body. Okay, so you won't have as many wraps. You could do 50-50 if you wanted, like. Okay, so maybe leave it at that there. A few turns to secure it in, and then trim off. Follow up with maybe 2 wraps of the gold wire. Okay, Okay, and then a few turns again to secure it in. And as before, just twist that wire. This is quite a thick gauge wire, it's taking quite a few twists, but it does come off. Okay, I'm going to wax my thread here. So the next thing I want to do is add on some jungle cock. Okay, so I've just got 2 pieces prepared here. I'm going to do one on each side, almost like a wing as opposed to roofed. Just a few turns first of all to see how we're doing. I'm happy enough with that there. So tighten those up here. Okay, and then I'm going to add another wee bit of, well, I'm going to add on more super glue on my thread, just so they definitely won't come off. They're the most expensive feather and probably the most delicate as well whenever it comes to casting them. They will break, but they'll fish fine, but it's whenever you put your forceps in after you hit a fish, you'll probably lose them if you don't. Okay. Now then, next we have to put on another hackle, and it normally would have been the hot orange hackle, but this time it's going to be magenta. That's quite a bright pink magenta. Okay, so I've just broken off the tip as before. I don't need wax this time because it's wet super glue, so I can do a few turns and then bring those fibres back. And you're not going to get a more secure hold than that. Okay, then we just, as before, start to train those fibres back. Okay, and then we'll start sweeping the hackle. I'm going to remove what I think will be excess here. Okay. Then come in and cut in at that with your thread. A few turns forward and then just sweep everything back if you want. And that means the stalk's secured in twice. At the same time start building up that head. You can sometimes, depending on how you can pull the stalk, but I'm going to cut it here. It looks quite strong. Okay, and then I'm just going to continue to build up a little bit. And then we'll get our whip finish tool. We'll do a few wraps, and that is the end of your McCormick's, your Magenta McCormick, I want to call it that there. Hopefully you found that useful, folks. As always, if you did, check out my other videos coming up on screen now. Until next time, thanks very much. All the best.